So now that we made it clear that Dana White does not do anything when it comes to matchmaking or any sort of work in the UFC, I feel like we need to talk more about the matchmaking. Because now that there's no UFC for next week, I'm looking at the upcoming matchups, and I gotta say, I don't know what the fuck Hunter Campbell is trying to cook here, but this is what happens when we let Hunter Campbell cook in the kitchen. Alright, like, I'm sorry. These matchups, like, some of them, they're just so weird, right? Some of them are quite frankly inexcusable to say the least. But regardless, I'm going to be talking about some of the more outrageous matchups that Hunter Campbell recently cooked up here because A, they don't make any sense at all, and B, I don't know why Hunter Campbell even thought that this was a good idea. So I'm going to talk about all the matchups that when I look at them, I'm going like, what the fuck is Hunter Campbell thinking? Yeah, so without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. So this first fight is basically the main inspiration as to why I thought about this video. Brandon Moreno versus Loner Kavanagh. I understand that Azamat pulled out and Kavanagh's filling in on short notice, but you're telling me that we couldn't find a flyweight that could fill in against Moreno on short notice without it being Loner Kavanagh, who, although I love, right, I do think that Loner Kavanagh in a few years will go on to be a top contender in the flyweight division. You're telling me a guy that's coming off a loss to Charles Johnson via brutal TKO, that guy is now fighting Brandon Moreno, who is number 5 in the flyweight division. How does that make any sense? All right, like, hell, I could have even argued that Bruno Silva should deserve more of a matchup. And I understand the UFC not giving Bruno Silva this opportunity because he's like 36 years old and he's been losing to a lot of the top contenders, but I don't think this is a great move for Loner Kavanagh. Like, I understand why Kavanagh took it, though. All right, I want to make that clear. Like, this is nothing against Kavanagh because he's probably getting paid more to save the card against Brandon Moreno and take a main event slot. But I just don't see how this is beneficial for Kavanagh's career. Like, I'm not even sure if Kavanagh can beat Bruno Silva just yet. And if I'm not even sure that he can beat Bruno Silva, I'm definitely not confident that he's going to beat Brandon Moreno, let alone even have a competitive fight. But regardless, though, hats off to Kavanagh, I guess. He got paid. He's getting the bag. He's filling in on short notice. He was in a training camp, but I just don't see why the UFC couldn't have given a better alternative for Moreno. Like, you're telling me Roy Val wouldn't take this fight on short notice once more? And listen, I understand that it happened 2 years ago, but I do feel like it would have been a more compelling fight because the second fight was really close. It was really close, and some people might have argued it for Brandon Moreno. So even though I understand why the UFC and Kavanagh are trying to make this matchup happen, like, I just feel like there are so many better alternatives for Brandon Moreno to fight that could be more competitive, that could also just, generate more hype for the card. But the fact that he's fighting a relatively young prospect with no experience who recently got slimed out by Charles Johnson, I just don't know why Brandon Moreno is fighting Loner Kavanagh at this point in his career. But I guess he's going to take any fight he gets. And as for Loner Kavanagh, he's getting paid, so I guess it would be stupid for him not to take this fight. Moving on, we got Chase Hooper and Lance Gibson Jr. Now, technically, both guys are in the same weight class, so I guess it makes sense on paper. But realistically, this fight should not be happening because Chase Hooper is objectively much better than Lance Gibson Jr. Like, Lance Gibson Jr. lost to Bobby Green, and I would pick Chase Hooper to twist up Bobby Green like a pretzel in the year of 2026. Right? And I feel like Chase Hooper, yes, he lost to Alexander Hernandez, but he's also beaten decent level competition like Vyacheslav Borshev. He even beat Jim Miller. It's just very apparent that Lance Gibson Jr. should not belong in the UFC, yet for some reason he's getting an opportunity against someone like Chase Hooper. Right? I think this is more of like the UFC thinking, oh, Chase Hooper, we need to feed him some more cans. But at the end of the day, like, Chase Hooper's already done that. And he went on a 5-fight win streak as a result before losing to Hernandez. So I don't understand where the matchmakers are thinking about this. If you want to rebuild Chase Hooper, like, give him, like, a sizable step down in competition. Like, maybe a Thiago Moises. Like, don't give him Lance Gibson Jr. because it's so obvious that you're just trying to can feed him at the end of the day. And even if he beats Lance Gibson Jr. via first-round submission, it doesn't change anything. All right, it really doesn't. So yeah, Chase Hooper. He's probably gonna twist up Lance Gibson Jr. with relatively no resistance, and at the end of the day, it's just like, why is Lance Gibson Jr. here in the UFC when we could have had more competitive fights for Chase Hooper, like maybe a Thiago Moises or a Jared Gordon at this point. Now moving on, we got Michael Venom Page and Sam Patterson. This one by far is the weirdest one to me because Michael Venom Page, he was a number 10 ranked middleweight in the UFC, and if he had won like 2 fights, he would have probably got a title shot, right? Now, I'm not saying he would have been the champion because Hamza Chimaev is there, and grapplers like Anthony Hernandez is there, but I feel like Michael Venom Page would have done a lot better at middleweight, and by not fighting any sort of unranked prospect with literally no name like Sam Patterson. And listen, this is not disrespect to Sam Patterson. If anything, I do like Sam Patterson, but this just does not do anything for Michael Venom Page, so I don't know why he took this fight. And more importantly, I don't know why the UFC even thought that this was a good fight to book, considering Michael Venom Page, he was doing very well in middleweight. Now all of a sudden he's moving back down to welterweight. Like, even if Michael Venom Page was going to move back down to welterweight, like, could you not have put him against another ranked opponent that was like just outside the top 10? I feel like that's very realistic, but the UFC, for some reason, is just not choosing to do that. So they gave him Sam Patterson, who's on a hell of a win streak, who does look dangerous, but I just don't know if Sam Patterson's ever fought someone at Michael Venom Page's level. And if MVP wins, good job, UFC. You guys ruined another prospect. Like, Hunter Campbell, like, genuinely needs to be fired from making any sort of matchmaking decisions just off the fact that this fight was booked for UFC London. So yeah, Michael Venom Page versus Sam Patterson makes absolutely zero sense. All right, I feel like MVP's gonna win. He could still lose, and then there goes all of MVP's hype. And it's just a lose-lose situation for the UFC at the end of the day. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense as to why Michael Venom Page and Sam Patterson was booked. But Hunter Campbell, for some reason, made this fight happen. Alright, now up next, we got Vicente Luque and Kyle Daukaus. Why is Vicente Luque up at middleweight? And why is he fighting Kyle Daukaus, who's coming off 2 brutal first-round finishes against Gerald Meerschaert and Michel Pereira? Like, that's the thing. I feel like Luque, he's like a step below Gerald Meerschaert, and Kyle Daukaus just finished Gerald Meerschaert in the first round, right? And like, both of them are washed. It's just that GM3, he has more of a size advantage and he can grapple. So at this point, I don't understand what the matchmaking decision is here. Kyle Daukaus should slime out Vicente Luque, and the worst part is, it's gonna be sad. It is really sad to see Vicente Luque lose nowadays because he's just not the same as he used to be. And it's going to be especially apparent since he's moving up to middleweight for some reason against a pretty dangerous guy in Chris Daukaus. So, yeah, I just don't know what Hunter Campbell thought when making this matchup. Like, if you were going to sacrifice Vicente Luque, like, give him to another prospect, I guess. Like, why is he getting slimed out by Kyle Daukaus, who's in middleweight? I don't even think this does anything for Kyle Daukaus. Like, he should be fighting other middleweights. Right? If anything, the fact that he slimed out Michel Pereira in the first round and then slimed out GM3 in the first round, like, he should be getting someone within the top 25 of the middleweight division. Maybe like a Roman Kopylov, who's just outside the rankings. But instead, he's fighting Vicente Luque for some reason. I don't know why Vicente Luque even took this fight, but unfortunately, he's going to get slimed out because Hunter Campbell, at the end of the day, is a complete retard. Last but not least, this one might be the most preposterous one. We got Azamat Murzakanov and Paulo Costa fighting each other at UFC 327, allegedly. Like, you have to say allegedly at this point because Paulo Costa is notorious for pulling out of fights. I understand why the UFC would be pissed off at Paulo Costa because it's rare that he actually stays with an entire fight week without pulling out. But that being said, though, why is he moving up to light heavyweight? And if he is going to move up to light heavyweight, why is he fighting someone who can arguably challenge for a number 1 contenders fight in Azamat Murzakanov? Right? I understand that Azamat Murzakanov, he popped for PEDs. He's relatively pretty boring. I will say that. Like, outside of the flashy knockouts, he's pretty boring on the mic and all that. But he's good. I like Azamat Murzakanov should be looking for like a potential top 5 contender matchup. And the fact that he's now fighting Paulo Costa instead for some reason, like, I don't understand why the UFC is doing this. Like, I can't even tell whether or not this is like a layup for Paulo Costa or a layup for Azamat Murzakanov. Because the UFC hate both guys. Like, maybe they're just trying to get rid of one of them, but yeah, it just doesn't make sense as to why Paulo Costa is moving up to light heavyweight to fight Azamat Murzakanov. Paulo Costa should be fighting more prospects at middleweight, all right? I understand he keeps pulling out. Maybe it has to do with the weight cut, but, you know, you got to keep punishing Paulo Costa by matching him up with relatively no-name prospects instead of just bumping him up to light heavyweight to fight a potential top 5 matchup in the future if he wins. I feel like that's the last thing the UFC should really be doing if they want to punish Paulo Costa. But Hunter Campbell is the chef here, and for some reason he thought that Azamat Murzakanov versus Paulo Costa is a great matchup. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can monetize this channel. But otherwise, leave any comments down below for video ideas, as well as any suggestions you have for me so I can make those videos in the future. But outside of that, I will see you guys next time. Peace.